Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the darkest corners of history. Today, we're counting down the top 10 most terrifying death sentence cases in history. These cases are not just about the crimes, but also the chilling stories that surround them. 10. Ali al-Nimr. Ali al-Nimr, a young Saudi Arabian man sentenced to death in 2014 for participating in anti-government protests when he was a minor. Al-Nimr's case drew international condemnation due to allegations of torture during his detention and the harshness of his sentence. Ali al-Nimr's case has become a focal point for human rights advocates and organizations worldwide, highlighting broader concerns about justice and human rights in Saudi Arabia. Born in 1995, al-Nimr was arrested at the age of 17 for participating in protests against the Saudi government. His arrest was accompanied by allegations of torture and coerced confessions, which further intensified international scrutiny of his case. Despite appeals for clemency from human rights organizations and the international community, Ali al-Nimr was sentenced to death in 2014. 9. Brandon Bernard. Brandon Bernard, a controversial death row inmate executed in December 2020. Bernard was convicted for his involvement in a 1999 double murder committed when he was 18 years old. Despite calls for clemency from celebrities, jurors, and activists who argued he had shown remorse and rehabilitation during his time in prison, Bernard was sentenced to death by lethal injection. During the trial, evidence emerged that Bernard played a lesser role in the crime, particularly in the killings themselves. He was not the shooter and did not have a direct hand in the deaths of the victims. Despite this, he was sentenced to death in 2000. 8. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, the former dictator of Iraq. Hussein ruled with an iron fist for decades, committing numerous atrocities against his own people and neighboring countries. His regime was marked by brutal repression, torture, and mass killings. In 2006, Hussein was found guilty of crimes against humanity for his role in the killing of 148 Shia Muslims in the town of Dujail in 1982. Hussein's execution, carried out on December 30, 2006, at a time when Iraq was embroiled in sectarian violence and insurgency, was broadcasted worldwide. The event sparked mixed reactions globally. He was sentenced to death by hanging, and his execution was broadcasted worldwide. 7. Salem Witch Trials. During the Salem witch trials, 20 people were executed, mostly by hanging, because they were accused of being witches. This happened because people were very afraid and superstitious, strongly believing in magic and the supernatural. Many of those accused were women who faced harsh questioning and unfair blame from their neighbors and others in the town. The trials showed how dangerous it can be when fear and superstition take over, leading to unjust actions and harming innocent people. As the trials escalated, community divisions deepened, trust eroded, and fundamental rights were disregarded in the pursuit of supposed justice. When judging others, even when things seemed scary or uncertain, however, they were sentenced to death in 1693. 6. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, a charismatic yet ruthless serial killer. Bundy confessed to the murders of 30 women in the 1970s, although the actual number of his victims is believed to be much higher. He used his charm and good looks to lure women to their deaths, often pretending to be injured or in need of help. His method of approach varied. Sometimes he feigned injuries, pretended to be an authority figure, or simply asked for assistance, luring his victims to secluded locations where he would then overpower and assault them. His execution in the electric chair in 1989 was a significant event, drawing crowds who celebrated the end of his reign of terror. Bundy remains one of the most infamous and studied serial killers in history. 5. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos, one of the most infamous female serial killers in history. Wuornos was convicted of murdering 7 men between 1989 and 1990. Her troubled childhood, marked by abuse and neglect, led her into a life of prostitution. She claimed that the killings were in self-defense against clients who had either assaulted or attempted to assault her. Aileen Wuornos' case captivated the public not only because of the brutality of her crimes but also due to the grim details of her life. Born on February 29, 1956, in Michigan, Wuornos experienced severe abuse and abandonment from a young age, leading her into a cycle of instability and criminal behavior. Her early adulthood was marked by a transient lifestyle and involvement in prostitution, where she encountered the men she later killed. Despite all of this, she was sentenced to death and executed in 2002. Her case drew significant media attention and was the subject of numerous documentaries and films. 4. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, known as the Killer Clown, was an American serial killer who used to dress up as a clown to hide his identity. Born in 1942, he hid a dark side beneath his facade as a successful businessman. In 1978, police discovered the remains of 29 young men and boys buried beneath his house and yard in Chicago. Gacy lured victims with promises of jobs or other ruses, then subjected them to sexual assault, torture, and murder. John Wayne Gacy's heinous crimes not only shocked the nation but also revealed a disturbing pattern of predatory behavior that spanned years. Beyond his public persona as a successful contractor and community volunteer, Gacy's basement became a chamber of horrors where he committed unspeakable acts. His victims, many of whom were vulnerable young men and boys, were brutally assaulted and murdered, with some even buried under his own home. His chilling double life as a community figure and sadistic killer shocked the nation. Convicted of 33 murders in 1980, he was sentenced to death in 1994, leaving a haunting legacy of horror. 3. Carl Panzram. Panzram is another example of the brutality of one human being and the scope of devastation they can cause. While awaiting his sentence during the last part of 1929, Carl confessed to 21 murders, countless felonies, and more than 1,000 acts of sodomy. No one was aware of these crimes until he confessed to them. Panzram personally wrote President Herbert Hoover to ensure his sentence would not be delayed, and on the fateful day he practically ran to the prison's gallows. Carl Panzram is another harrowing example of the brutality that one human being can inflict and the vast scope of devastation they can cause. Born in 1891, Panzram's early life was marked by extreme hardship and abuse, which arguably shaped his violent tendencies. He wasn't sorry about what he did, instead he seemed eager for death. "Hurry it up," he snapped at the executioner. "I could hang a dozen men while you're fooling around," he said before his death sentence in 1930. 2. Albert Fish. Albert Fish committed horrific crimes against children, far more gruesome and numerous than those of Alan Lee Davis. Fish was a serial child molester and murderer who even cannibalized 5 of his victims. Although he claimed to have cannibalized up to 100 children, only 5 were confirmed. One of Fish's most chilling aspects was his apparent enjoyment of the pain and suffering he inflicted. Reports from his trial and interviews with psychologists revealed his fascination with pain, both giving and receiving. Fish was executed in the electric chair, a method he found appealing. A reporter noted that Fish's eyes gleamed at the thought of the intense heat from electrocution, and Fish even thanked the judge for sentencing him to death by electrocution. 1. Alan Lee Davis. Alan Lee Davis was executed for the brutal murders of Nancy Weiler and her 2 daughters in Jacksonville, Florida, on May 11, 1982. Nancy, who was 3 months pregnant, was beaten over 25 times in the face and head with a .357 Magnum. Her daughters, Christina and Catherine, were also killed. Christina was shot twice in the face, and Catherine was shot while trying to run away and then beaten. His last meal included lobster tail, fried potatoes, fried shrimp, fried clams, garlic bread, and A&W root beer. His execution drew attention because he bled heavily from his nose and suffered burns on his head, leg, and groin during electrocution. These distressing details reignited debates about the humanity and ethics of the death penalty, particularly the use of the electric chair. Critics argued that the method was barbaric and inhumane, leading to further discussions and eventually to changes in the methods of execution used in the United States. However, he was sentenced to death in 2000. If you found this exploration compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on this case or if there are other recent issues you'd like us to explore further. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.